Hello, welcome to a new Oxygen XML webinar. Last week we released a new version of the Oxygen XML tools, version 22.1, and also version 1.2 of a new product called Oxygen Feedback. And this is the first webinar in a series of 7 webinars that we scheduled for the following month. Covering different areas and different technologies and different products that we provide. And today we want to focus on this new product that we made available, the Oxygen Feedback. That should work both independently of Oxygen, but also in connection with Oxygen and Oxygen Web Help. My name is George Bina, and I invited my colleague Alin Balasha to show you what is Oxygen Feedback and how it may help you. Before we start here, it is some useful information. The most frequent question that we receive for our webinars is whether the webinars are recorded or not. And this webinar is like all the other webinars we host will be recorded, and the recording will be available from our website on the event page and also on the Oxygen XML YouTube channel. For questions, we reserved some time at the end of the webinar to go through the questions and answer them so everyone can hear the questions and the answers. But please ask the questions at any time, because then it will be, you'll forget probably by the end of the webinar what you wanted to ask. And we try to respond also through the questions panel to your questions immediately. It's me and also my colleague Radu Pisoi, who is the project manager for the Oxygen Feedback product. So he's also online, and we will try to respond to your questions. You may use the questions panel from the GoToWebinar interface, but also if you use Twitter, you can address the questions to the Oxygen XML account or mark the questions with the Oxygen XML hashtag so we can easily identify them. So now without further ado, then let me give control to my colleague Alin. Alin is one of the lead developers of the project, so he can start his presentation. Hello, Alin. Welcome.
Hi, George. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Alin Balasha. I'm a senior software developer at Oxygen. Today, I would like to show you how you can use one of the newest members of Oxygen products family to improve your online content. Oxygen Feedback is a comment management platform that can be easily integrated in any website. It is specialized for technical documentation website and has support for version comments. It also has a simple interface for comments moderation. It can be integrated with Oxygen XML Editor to make it more efficient for content authors to manage comments and react to community feedback. This is our agenda for today. I will walk you through the key features of Oxygen Feedback. To do so, we will consider the following scenario. Let's assume that we already have an existing website containing our documentation. First of all, what we want to do is to integrate Oxygen Feedback on this website. This way, we will be able to receive feedback from our end users regarding the online content or our product. After that, we'll configure our website details in Oxygen in order to access the comment stream directly from within the application. Finally, based on the feedback our users provide on the website, we can adjust the content of the documentation and republish it. I have structured my sample project for this demonstration in Dita, and I will use Oxygen Publishing Engine to generate web help output. I am sure that many of you are familiar with both Dita and web help. For those of you that are not, you can find a series of related webinars covering these topics on oxygenxml.com. Let's switch to Oxygen and quickly overview our content. It is a sample data map that contains very basic details about how to manage a garage and how to maintain a car. It is one of the sample data maps that comes bundled with Oxygen XML Editor. For this project, I have used an integration server and the Oxygen Publishing Engine to automate the publishing process. Each time I will commit a modification in my project, the build process will be triggered and the web help output will be republished. The web help output is hosted on the GitHub pages site associated with my GitHub project that I will use for this this presentation. Let me show you how the web help output looks like for this data map. Let's open the page where it is deployed. This is how the web help responsive output looks for the for our data map. Now that we have seen how the output looks like, let me show you how to integrate Oxygen feedback on the website. One starting point for accessing the Oxygen feedback service is to go to the product's presentation page on oxygenxml.com. Here you can find an overview of the product, explaining the key features and the advantages of using Oxygen feedback. You can also access the What's New section, where you can read more about the changes made in the latest version. You can see the information about the pricing model. You can access the section containing the video demonstration about the product. And you can also give the comments module a try before installing it. A demo version of the comments of Oxygen feedback is deployed on this page, so you can try it before before you add it to your website. Let's go to the application page and continue with the installation process. First of all, in order to use Oxygen feedback service, I will need an account. Oxygen feedback allows users to create a new account using an email address and a password through the sign up form available on the login page, or they can use their Google or Facebook accounts to sign in. To continue, I will use my Google account to log in. Since I do not have any site configurations configured, I am directed to a welcome page where I can find a useful video that explains me how to create my first site configuration and how to install it in my web help output. To proceed, I will click on the Add Your First Site button, and I'm directed to the installation process. This is a three-step process. In the first step, I will fill in some descriptive information for my site. let's choose a name, since it is a documentation for a garage. I will call it garage. Let's add the description. Garage administration. And let's choose a logo for our site configuration. After that, I can choose the comments moderation policy. I will have to choose whether I will request all new comments that are added on my website to be approved by a moderator, or that all comments are publicly visible on the website the moment they are added without requiring approval by one of the site team administrators. Also, I can choose to allow or not anonymous posts on my website. For this site, I will choose to not allow anonymous users. Let's continue to the next step. The second step of the installation of the configuration process is dedicated to the new site's initial version. Each site configuration can have multiple versions. This is useful if you plan to have multiple versions of the output, for example, when publishing technical documentation for a product that has multiple released versions. Since my documentation does not have any previous version, 1.0 seems fine for the name of the first version. Next, I will have to fill in the base URL where my documentation is deployed. This is very important because the comments component will only be displayed on the pages within the hierarchy of this base URL. Let's go to our documentation webpage and copy the URL. As you can see, I will choose as a base URL the root URL where the web help output is deployed. That is the URL where the index HTML page resides. Let's go back to the feedback page and paste the URL here. Note that only URLs with HTTP and HTTPS protocols are allowed, and the URL must not point to a file. For example, if I write here index.html and choose to continue, an error will be raised and telling me that the base URL should consist of a protocol hostname and a path, but without pointing to a file. So I have to correct the URL and continue with the installation process. The last page of the site configuration displays the installation details. Since my project is configured to generate web help output from the command line, I will choose the second option for continuing this process. The key of installing Oxygen feedback on your website is to embed this HTML fragment in any page where you want the command module to be displayed. Oxygen feedback offers good integration with web help output, and the web help output is very extensible and allows inserting custom content in the published output. I will copy the installation fragment in the publishing template used to generate the web help output, and I will configure web help to include it in my documentation. So let's copy it and go back to Oxygen and configure the transformation to use this this fragment. For this, I will create an XML file inside my publishing template directory, and I will paste the fragment there. Note that the publishing template is the core concept of the web help output customization support. You can find more about this concept in our webinars and in our user guide on oxygenxml.com. Let's create the XML file I was telling you about in the publishing template directory. Let's choose a name. And create it. Here I will paste the fragment I copied earlier and save it. Next, I will have to reference this file in my publishing templates descriptor file. This is the file with the OPT extension. I will open it and insert the web help. The web help output offers offers you the possibility to include custom HTML fragments using various placeholders that are placed in different places of the output pages. Those placeholders are identified using an ID. For the installation fragment of Oxygen feedback, there is a dedicated placeholder which I'll have to designate here. Let's say it is named web help fragment feedback, and here I will have to fill in the path of the file I created earlier. Now I can save my descriptor file. Next, what I have to do is to push the changes I've just made to my GitHub repository and let the continuous integration server do its job and republish the output. Let's go to the Git client application and commit our changes. We have to commit the new file we have created and the descriptor file that we have modified. Once the changes are pushed to the GitHub repository, the continuous integration server will pick them up and trigger a new build that will republish our output. Let's check if the continuous integration server has started the build. I use Travis as continuous integration server. We can see that the build has started, but it will take a while until it finishes. So we have to wait until then. Another way to integrate Oxygen feedback in the web help output is in using the support that the web help responsive transformation scenario offers in Oxygen XML Editor. You can follow the procedure from this from the last step of the installation process. You have to copy the same HTML fragment, go to Oxygen. In the Data Mouse Manager view, open the Configure Transformation Scenarios, duplicate the data map webpack responsive scenario, and note that this scenario contains a dedicated tab for the feedback installation fragment, where I can paste it, save it, and after we save it, we can run the transformation and have the Oxygen feedback embedded in the published output. But we'll not use this approach on this demonstration. Let's look on the let's go to the integration server and see if the feedback fragment was embedded in our documentation. The build has finished, and we can check the published output. Oxygen feedback is embedded in the topics page of the web help output. As you can see, the comment module of Oxygen feedback is expanded under the topic content in the web help output. To continue, I want to add some comments in the page and simulate a dialogue between an end user and the site administrator. To do so, I will open the page in another browser to act as a different person, to log in with another account. I will open the page, go to that topic. Since I've configured my site to not allow anonymous posts, I need to log in before I post a comment. So I'll click login. Oh, I've chosen the wrong account, sorry. Let's say I am an electric car owner and I want to request that the authors of this documentation add some tips about how can I extend my electric car battery life. So can you add some tips about electric cars? I will add the comment. Now I have to wait that my comment is approved by one of the site's moderator users. I will tell you more about the user roles available on a site later on. Next, let's see how to manage the comments. Let's go back to Oxygen feedback page. since now I have one site configuration created, I am directed to the dashboard page. This page aggregates basic information about your existing site configurations. There is a drop-down menu at the top that you can use to filter the information, the sites that the dashboard displays information for. You can choose to see all sites, the sites you own, or the sites you are assigned as an administrator or a moderator. This option is not available for me since I do not have such a role or on any websites. The dashboard contains the following panes. There is the site panel that displays the existing site configurations. The site configurations with pending comments are listed first, and then the rest are sorted alphabetically. Below the sites panel, there is the activity stream. It displays all the activity for the site configurations, including information about the person who made the change and details about each activity. There is a panel that displays information about your current subscription. It displays your current subscription plan, the date, the expiration date, and some usage statistics about your subscription. Below you can find the two site usage statistics views. There is the page view panel that displays the total number of page views for the sites that you are assigned as a owner or an admin, and the comments panel that displays the total number of comments for the sites that you also are assigned as a owner or an admin. Next, let's concentrate on how to moderate the comments that user have added on our website. As you can see in the site panel, I can see that there is one comment that is waiting for approval. I can click on this information and I am directed to the comments management page. Here you can search through all the available comments on the current site. Since we have only one comment, only this one is displayed. You can filter the displayed comments by their state. You can choose to see only the pending comments or to see, for example, all comments. You can filter comments by version. You can filter comments by their the time interval when they were added on your website, or you can use this search field to search comments by their content or by their author or by the page title they were added on. Here I can see the comment that is waiting for my approval. I can choose to approve the comment or to reject it if for some reason it contains some inappropriate content, but this is not the case. So I will approve it. Now that I have approved the comment, I need to give an answer for I need to give an answer to my user. to add a reply, I need to go to the documentation page and add a response there. I can navigate to the documentation page using the link below the username. I am directed to the target documentation page, and that comment is and the target comment is highlighted. I can add a reply, clicking the reply button, and say I will ask one of our contributors to add the requested information. Now that I have answered my user, I want to continue by telling you more information about the available user roles on a website. There are two categories of users. There are the regular users. These are the users that posted at least one comment on your site on your website. There is the generic user role, the member. He can post new comments, and if the site is moderated, his comments require approval. There is the trusted user role. You can promote your site user to this role if you want that their comments to be automatically approved without needing a moderator to check them. And there is the banned user role. You can assign this role to the users that I don't know added some inappropriate comments on your website, some content that you do not agree or you do not agree with. The second category of users is the site administration team. There is the owner, the site owner. This role is automatically assigned when you create a new site configuration, as I did. This type of user, of course, can configure, can moderate comments, posts, can configure site settings, add new versions, manage team members and user roles. They can delete or transfer the ownership of the site configuration. The admin users can moderate comment posts and configure site settings, add new versions, and so on. But they cannot delete the site configuration. The last type of users are the moderator users. They can only moderate comment posts. You can manage these user roles in the site community page. Let's go to the feedback page. You can access the site community page from the site panel following the community link. Here you can see all your site user listed. The site community is made from the user that posted comments on your website and the site administration team. Here you can promote or demote the role assigned to your users. For example, I can make John a trusted user. Now all his posts will be approved by default when he adds new comments. Also, I can promote John as admin or as a moderator. This action requires requires John's approval. So an email was sent to John so he can accept the promotion, the site, the user role promotion. You can filter the users listed here by using the search field at the top of the user list, and you can filter also by user roles. This one note I should make is that this page is only accessible to the site owner and to the users who have an admin user role. The next page I want to talk about is the site usage statistic page. Here you can see the number of page views and the number of comments added for a site configuration. Users with the role of owner and admin can see the statistics for the site's configuration. Let's go to feedback and open that page. The page is accessible also from the site panel, clicking the statistics link. Since I have just added my sites, there is no data to be displayed in this chart. If I select current month, I can see that my site has 6 page views and 2 comments added. To better demonstrate the utility of this page, I will go to I will open this page for another site that I created some time ago and has more data to display. This page includes filtering options at the top of the page for choosing the type of data to be displayed. You can choose to display only the page views, only the comments, or both. The top part of the page displays statistics for page views and comments in a chart according to the selected filtering options. You can filter by version. You can filter by the time interval. Here you can choose between some predefined time intervals, or you can select a custom interval clicking on the calendar form here. Below this chart, the same information is displayed in a tabular form with exact numeric values and you can choose to sort according to different columns. The last table on the page shows statistics for the most popular pages based on the number of page views the number of page views or the number of comments according to the time interval you have selected in the top form. Here you can see which pages were the most popular amongst your users, which pages have the most page views or the highest number of comments on your site. So far, we have seen how easy it is to use Oxygen feedback to register and manage users' feedback. Now let's move forward to the next part of the presentation and see how to update the documentation content by integrating the user's feedback into Oxygen. Let's switch to Oxygen. In order to integrate Oxygen feedback in Oxygen XML Editor, we have developed a plugin which contributes a dedicated view for displaying the comments associated with your documentation source. We can open that view using the window menu, show view, and select feedback comments manager. Before continuing, I will need to connect to the feedback service, and the authorization process is done in the browser, and the new page is open where I need to authorize Oxygen XML Editor to access the data from my account. I click authorize. When the authorization process finishes, I can go back to Oxygen. We can see that I am now logged in. Next, I will have to tell Oxygen where the documentation for the documentation output for my data map is deployed. I need to configure a mapping between the data source and the generated web help output. To do so, I'll open the plugins preferences page and click new to create a new mapping. Automatically, Oxygen detects all your site configurations that you have defined on your account. The base URL of your website is automatically pre-completed in the publish site base URL text field. What we have to do is to select the data map from the file system to associate with that base URL. We'll select the data map and save the configuration. Now we need to save the preferences. You can see that the feedback view has been updated and all the comments that were added earlier on my website are now listed. Here is John's initial comment, and here is my my answer, my reply for that comment. The view contains two displays modes. You can switch between context data map display mode and current editor. Context data map display mode shows you all the comments available on the site that your data map is associated with. And the current editor display mode shows you the comments that were added on the page associated with your current data topic with your data topic opened in the current editor. We'll continue with the context data map display mode. If I see a comment that gives me some useful information that needs to be inserted in one of my topics, I can double click that comment, and Oxygen opens the associated data topic. If we go to our documentation page, we can see that the two comments were added on the car maintenance topic. And when I double clicked the comment in the feedback comments manager view, the car maintenance data topic was opened. Now to continue, I'll have to fulfill the request of my user. For this, I have created a dedicated topic addressing the topic that the user requested. It is a topic that displays basic information about how you can protect your electric car's battery. What I want to do is to link it in my data map, so it will be published in the web help output. I will drag and drop it and save the data map. Now, in order to republish the documentation, I'll have to push these changes on my GitHub repository so that the continuous integration server will pick them up and republish my documentation. So I'll go to source tree and commit the modified map. Now let's go back to Oxygen. Since I have fulfilled my the request of my user, I can consider this topic to be completed. The feedback comments manager view offers a resolve action that marks this comment thread as being resolved. This way, I can keep track of the threads that remain to be addressed next. So I will resolve this thread. You can see that the state of the comment has been changed, and it is now marked as resolved. Next, until the continuous integration server finishes the republish process, I want to talk about the resolve comments threads workflow. A comment thread can be marked as resolved after the user feedback was addressed. This state only applies to comments thread, that is the first level comments. It does not apply to comment replies. This action is available only to the administration team members. Once marked as resolved, a comment thread can be reopened in two ways. Manually by one of the administration team members if he considers that not all the topics that the user requested were addressed, or automatically if a new reply is added. Let's see if the published output has finished. Let's go to the integration server. Yes, the build was finished. Let's check the output page. You can see that the topic I added earlier was added on my page, and we can notice that the state of the comment thread was also updated. Next, I want to tell you a few words about the subscription model available for Oxygen Feedback. First of all, in order to be able to create a site configuration, you need to subscribe to one of the available subscription plans. There are 4 plans available: Starter, Team, Business, or Corporate. Each plan has a different limit for the allowed number of monthly page views, site configurations, or the number of users that you can promote as moderator. A good news is that all Oxygen users are entitled to 1 year free for the team subscription plan. If you are an Oxygen user, you can contact our sales department to activate this offer. One note I should make is that the comments component is disabled in one of these situations. If the subscription expires or the monthly page views limit is exceeded. In the first case, if the subscription expires, the comments component is disabled until you renew your subscription plan. In the second case, the comments component is disabled until next month when the page view limit is reset. So if your site constantly exceed the monthly page views, probably you will need to upgrade your subscription plan. As a conclusion of this webinar, you can use Oxygen Publishing Engine to publish your online documentation to WebL responsive output, and use Oxygen Feedback as a commenting platform and embed it in your website. You can then use Oxygen XML Editor to integrate the feedback from your end users. This concludes my demonstration. Thank you. If you have any questions, you can ask them on the channel that George mentioned. George?
Thank you, Alin. Sorry, I was busy answering, me and Radu answering many questions that we received during your presentation. Thanks for presenting. And now I think it's time to go through the questions that we received and see some of the answers. Please feel free to ask additional questions so we can go through them now. So one question was, are comments preserved when you republished after addressing the comments? And the answer is yes, the comments are stored on the feedback server. And when you republish the content, they are automatically displayed on the new version of the content, let's say. Oxygen feedback also has support for versioning. So when you define a site, you can define also a version for that site, and that allows to manage what happens to the comments that were created on a previous version, whether they are visible or not on a new version of that content. So you have the option to bring the previous version's comments also on a newer version if you want, or you may decide that a new version starts clean. Let's say that's how you define for each version how the comments from previous version will appear. You can also, of course, after you resolve a comment, you can also delete the comment if you want, and that means the comment will not appear anymore on any feedback HTML page, let's say. Okay. Are users' login information stored in a database maintained by Syncrosoft? That's another question. And the answer is yes, if you use the feedback service that we have and you register, or a user will register on that, that information will be stored there. But users can also sign up with their Google or Facebook account. And in that case, we do not actually store, we store information about the user, but the authentication is done through Google or Facebook. There are also plans on the short term to provide an enterprise on-premise version of the Oxygen feedback. And in that case, you will host the server and you have all that information. And you may decide also to, in that case, we will plan to support also LDAP, for instance. So you can have a different way to authenticate users. Can you have a workflow that requires a technical expert, for example, to sign off on a proposed change before implementing that change? And then there was also clarification on this. That says, for example, could the following be possible? A customer requests tips on a page, the site moderator or content expert gets notified that accepts or rejects the comment, and then the owner or admin gets notified that the comment was accepted and implements the change. And yes, that is possible by when you set up a site, you may decide that is moderated or not. And if it's moderated, then when the user will post a comment, it will not be approved yet. It will be pending in a pending state, and then somebody will need to approve that. And once it is approved, a new notification is sent, and maybe the people that will have the role to respond and integrate that the comments will receive that notification. Then they can act on the approved messages by updating the documentation as Aline presented. If they use the connector that we have for the desktop version of Oxygen, then they will be able to see those comments, those approved comments directly within Oxygen, and use this mapping directly from the comments to the source, so they can easily update the source and then mark the comment as resolved, maybe directly from the Oxygen desktop. Okay, a note that on-premise version makes sense, especially with respect to GDPR requirements, for instance. Then we had a couple of questions about if this can be integrated with the content management systems like Ixiasoft or Astoria were mentioned here. And the answer is yes, of course. The feedback works actually on any HTML output. So as long as you can generate that fragment on the HTML pages that brings in the comment support, then it will work on any HTML output. Of course, for the web help that we generate from Oxygen, we have this simplified integration, let's say, because the web help was updated to automatically generate that fragment, especially from the transformation configuration dialog. You have a dedicated tab as Aline presented, and you may go back to the recording maybe to see that if you want. So you can just go to that feedback tab and paste the integration fragment, and then that will be generated automatically on all the pages. But again, the feedback can be integrated on any HTML content. It's not necessarily limited to web help, but for the web help, you have this additional support that we provide. And content management systems like Ixiasoft or Astoria that were mentioned, but also basically all the data content management systems, they can generate data open toolkit output, and they can generate the web help output from Oxygen. So you can also benefit of the full, let's say, support that we provide for that, because one of the initial design requirements or the origin for the Oxygen feedback was the need to have feedback support in the generated web help from Oxygen. And that's one of the things that we try to optimize, and also to close the circle and be able to update the source based on those comments as easy as possible. That's why we created also the plugin that connects the comments with the desktop version of Oxygen with the source of the content. Okay. Can the sign-in be integrated with a corporate single sign-on technology? As I mentioned, we plan to have an enterprise version, and that should allow connecting to different ways to allow users to authenticate. LDAP, for instance, will be one of the things that we plan to support there. Will the recording of the session be available? Yes. As I mentioned, also at the beginning, we record all the webinars, and the recording is made available on the event page and also on the Oxygen XML YouTube channel. You will also should receive a follow-up email with a notification when that recording is available. Is there a way to auto-approve comments? The answer is yes. There are different options for that. So whether you can set a site to not be moderated, and in that case, anyone who will post a comment will automatically be approved. The other option is that you can define some of the users to be trusted. So you can set the trusted role to some users, and then their comments will be automatically approved. So you have different possibilities for that. Okay. For users, can you add a column that indicates whether the user is internal or external to your company? So for this, I think you can either promote your company users to be moderators, for instance, or you can trust them. So you can mark them as trusted. But we do not have a way to say this is my company user. If it's I mean, usually you care about, or people care about the users with the role of moderator or something like that, because when they reply to a comment, that has more weight, right? If the answer comes from someone involved or authorized or involved with the product, right? So then it's the answer has a different weight for the one that receives that. Um, can you, from the popular page metrics entries, go to a topic and or see the comments on that topic? And the answer is yes, of course. Those popular pages are presented, and the titles of those pages are actually links to the corresponding topics. So you can just follow them and you will be able to go to that page and see the comments on that page and so on. There was a bit of confusion when you connected the plugin from the desktop version of Oxygen. So was who needs to authorize the request to integrate the feedback manager in Oxygen Editor? So basically the thing is that let's say you are an Oxygen desktop user and you have an account on the feedback platform. So if you install if you have the plugin, the feedback comments plugin in the desktop, the plugin needs to connect to Oxygen feedback to the server to receive the comments, right? And in order to do that, the plugin needs to be authorized, and you need to log in into your account and authorize the plugin to get the comments on your behalf, basically. So that's why you need to authorize, you actually as the user need to authorize the plugin. So the plugin makes sense, for instance, for technical writers. So then when they work on the documentation, you can create a moderator account for them on the platform so they can connect to the Oxygen feedback, and as they work to update the documentation, they can immediately see also all the comments for a topic, for instance, when they update that topic. Or if they, they do not, they just need to work on the documentation, they can just see all the comments for a specific data map, and then they can just follow the links to open the corresponding topics that have comments and see how they can improve those topics in response to those comments, and then mark those comments as resolved and so on. So that's the workflow that we have in mind. Yeah, so XML author can be substituted for XML editor. Yes, so the the plugin that Aline presented will work both in XML editor and XML author products. And the difference between author and editor is that the XML editor contains all the functionality that you have in XML author, plus the XML development functionality, like schema editors, XSLT debugger, XSLT editor, and so on. So the part that involves developing XML applications, basically, or customizing XML applications. But usually for people involved in creating content, maintaining content, the XML author has all the functionality they need. You can trigger publishing, you can trigger transformations from the XML author, and so on. Do the number of configurations only apply to new maps or updates to existing maps docs? I think this refers to the number of site configurations for the subscription plans. So this applies to what you define as a site, basically like a site maps to a base URL where you publish your documentation. There you can have one map or maybe multiple maps published, and if you republish a new data map, for instance, that will not generate a new site. Uh, Basically, it may generate a new version, maybe if you for the same site, if that's what it means, or it may update an existing version. So you will not have a new site for a new just because you republish your documentation after you make an update. It may be the same site, or you may decide that you want to track that as a different version of that site. So then you can benefit of what happens with the comments. Maybe you can want to start fresh, for instance. In our case, we keep different versions of the Oxygen XML documentation. So we have the web help, for instance, for the latest version 22.1, but also for 22.0 and 21 and so on. And we define different versions in the same site for this documentation that is published. So basically, in our case, the version maps directly to the documentation for a specific product version. That was actually also the intention of defining this concept of versions for sites, to be able to match if you keep published different versions of your documentation, for instance, to be able to have a one-to-one match with what you have defined on the feedback platform. Is the feedback server hosted locally or a Synchrosoft server? So as I mentioned, for now, we have a hosted server that's available on feedback.oxygenxml.com. Soon there will be available also an enterprise version that you can install on premise, and yeah, so then you'll have that option as well. How do you let the customer know if the comment was resolved if you go with the delete comment option? So we usually basically reply to a comment, and then the user will get an answer to that issue that they or the comment that they entered on a page, and then on a following version, maybe we decide to if you resolve that in the documentation, then you can also reply to that thread and say to the user, okay, we updated the documentation for the next version to include your remark or something like that. So you can reply directly on that thread, maybe, to the end user. How soon will the Enterprise Edition be available? So this is basically on our roadmap for the short term. So I would expect this to be so it's like the next major thing that we want to add for the Oxygen feedback. So it should be available soon, I guess. Maybe in a few months, maybe in the autumn or something like that. Can you archive comments that you can also refer to 3 years later? So basically, we do not have that as an option for now, but it's a good thing to probably introduce a new state for the comments to be archived rather than deleted. So we will think about adding this. For now, for instance, one possibility is to leave the comments for a previous version. Do not delete them, for instance, and then you can publish a new version that does not show the previous comments. So then you can always move to a new site version that's fresh, let's say, and then you keep the comments matched to all sites that may not be displayed anymore. But we will keep in mind this, and I see that my colleague Radu Pisoy, who is the manager, the project manager for the Oxygen feedback, already noted this as a feature request to be added to the product. But can you use author in place of editor, publishing engine plus feedback plus author? Yes, so that was a previous question. Yes, so of course you can. Actually, the Oxygen publishing engine is needed only if you want to publish from a script outside of Oxygen. If you publish from Oxygen desktop, you can also run the webhelp transformation, for instance, from Oxygen desktop. It includes the web help, so there's no need necessarily for the Oxygen publishing engine unless you want to automate the publishing, as Aline did with Travis, that published automatically when he committed to the project, for instance. In that case, you will need the publishing engine, but otherwise you can generate the web help also directly from the Oxygen author. So you can only use the Oxygen author and the feedback, for instance. Will it be possible to build web help with the feedback commenting using DataOT with appropriate plugins to allow command line build of web help? Yes, so basically that's what the Oxygen publishing engine is a data open toolkit with the Oxygen web help, and also contains the chemistry engine. We also provide the Oxygen web help license separately, exactly to allow publishing with the data open toolkit outside of Oxygen from a command line or a continuous integration server and so on. So yes, that's possible. That is what Aline did using the Oxygen publishing engine in that GitHub project, and that GitHub project is public. So yeah, so if you look at the recording, you should be able to see also the location of that project, for instance, and then you can see also the build scripts for republishing the documentation, for instance. So I think we are at the end of the questions. Thanks for asking so a good number of questions. As I mentioned, we scheduled a number of 7 webinars. So this was the first in a group of 7 webinars every week on Wednesday at the same hour. Next week we will have HTML5 support in Oxygen. If you didn't check our HTML5 support, you'll be surprised how far we go with this. We implemented schematron validation, we support the not well formed, and so on. So it's a very good support for HTML5. Also, if you work with JSON and JSON schema, we did a lot of work on that. So we provide a very good support, and that will be the subject of the following week on June 10. Then you can explore the markdown support that we provide in June 17, both in the web author and in the desktop version and so on. We have also schematron validation for markdown, for instance. Then we want to go back to number of data webinars. We will cover in the future also more advanced use, but we wanted to have a getting started with data webinar to start from zero basically and see how you can start a project, publish, set up things a bit in Oxygen, so to get people started, and that will be on June 24th. And then we'll show the web author, how that can be used to customize the authoring experience, especially for subject matter experts or people that are not necessarily very familiar with structured content. That will be on July 1st. And then continuing on the collaboration part, we'll look at Oxygen Content Fusion next. Actually, by that time, there will be also a new version of Content Fusion with really interesting functionality that will help even more the collaboration part. And then, yeah, so that's the last webinar in this series. And unfortunately, many of the events that we planned to go to this year were canceled or moved. And DITA North America is one of the conferences that moved from April, I think, or May to September. So this and others were canceled, other events that we had planned to go to. So this is the current set of upcoming events that we have. So as you see, many of them are these online events, these webinars that we plan, but you can go also to oxygenxml.com on our website under events program, so company events, and you have here all the upcoming events, webinars or conferences that we go to, read more about them, register, and so on. There are also the past events are listed here. Many of them have recordings for if there are some sessions like the DITA OT Day conference that we organize or the Oxygen users meetups. You find a lot of recorded sessions there. So I think we are at the end of our webinar. Hope you will join us for the following ones as well. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Aline, for presenting, and also thanks Radu Pisoit for answering many of the questions during the webinar. So hopefully we'll see you next time, next week. Thanks again and have a nice day. Goodbye.